Marcus Grant returned to Riverdale like a man who had been running for too long, only to find the past waiting for him like an old friend who refused to stay quiet. His eyes, once bright with ambition, now seemed heavier, etched with the quiet exhaustion of regret. The streets of Riverdale hadn't changed much. The old oak trees still lined Main Street, their leaves rustling like whispered secrets, and the cafe by the river still served coffee that tasted like burnt memories. But Riverdale was no longer home. Not for Marcus. Not with Leah Morgan here, still lingering in the corners of his mind, reminding him of the things they never said, never did. And then there was Daniel Hayes, who had been Marcus's best friend once upon a time, until life got in the way. He didn't know why he had come back. Maybe it was the years of silence. Maybe it was because Leah had called. But Marcus knew one thing. Nothing in Riverdale was ever as simple as it seemed. Marcus Grant returned to Riverdale like a man who had been running for too long, only to find the past waiting for him like an old friend who refused to stay quiet. His eyes, once bright with ambition, now seemed heavier, etched with the quiet exhaustion of regret. The small town hadn't changed much. The old oak trees still lined Main Street, their leaves rustling like whispered secrets, and the cafe by the river still served coffee that tasted like burnt memories. But Riverdale was no longer home. Not for Marcus. Not with Leah Morgan here, still lingering in the corners of his mind, reminding him of the things they never said, never did. And then there was Daniel Hayes, who had been Marcus's best friend once upon a time, until life got in the way. He didn't know why he had come back. Maybe it was the years of silence. Maybe it was because Leah had called. But Marcus knew one thing. Nothing in Riverdale was ever as simple as it seemed. Marcus had been gone for almost 5 years, and the weight of that absence pressed on his chest every time he walked the streets. Riverdale felt like a place frozen in time, the same cracked pavement, the same old houses, and the same people who had stayed behind. As he walked past the familiar landmarks, he couldn't help but feel disconnected, like he was moving through a shadow of his former self. The old park where he and Leah used to sit and talk about their futures was now filled with children playing, and it made him feel even more distant from the life he used to have. He passed by the cafe where he had spent hours drinking coffee with Leah, exchanging jokes and planning their dreams. That was before everything fell apart, before his job offer took him to the city, before Leah and Daniel became strangers in his life, before his guilt grew too large to ignore. He had spent years telling himself that leaving was the best choice, that the city was where he could start fresh. But now, standing in Riverdale, he wasn't so sure anymore. He hadn't realized how much the town still held a grip on him until he came back. Every corner seemed to carry a memory, and each one made him question his decision to stay away for so long. As Marcus entered the town square, his eyes found Leah. She was sitting on the same bench near the river, her face framed by the same dark curls he remembered so well. She looked different, more polished, more confident, but there was a guardedness to her smile that didn't exist before. Leah had always been outgoing, the kind of person who laughed loudly and made everyone around her feel like they were the most important person in the room. But that night, when Marcus had seen her from a distance, it struck him that her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Marcus," Leah said, her voice warm, though tinged with something he couldn't quite place. He nodded, stepping closer, but a familiar tension settled between them. It was the kind of tension that neither could acknowledge, yet both knew was there. "I didn't think you'd come back," Leah said, standing up. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment too long, as if she were trying to read him. "How's the city life treating you?" "It's different," Marcus replied. "I'm not sure it's home anymore." Leah's lips curled into a half-smile, and for a brief moment, it felt like nothing had changed. But Marcus could see it, the way her shoulders were slightly tense, the way her words were carefully chosen. It was the same Leah he used to know, but there was a wall between them now. A wall that neither of them had built, but somehow both had contributed to. It wasn't long before Marcus saw Daniel, leaning against the old brick building that housed the town's hardware store. Daniel's presence was different now too. He was older, a little more worn, but still the same guy who once spent hours talking with Marcus about sports, work, and life. Yet when their eyes met, Marcus could feel the weight of unspoken words in the air. Daniel hadn't been the one to leave, Marcus was. and that left a bitter taste in both of their mouths. "Marcus," Daniel said with a clipped nod. "Didn't think I'd see you around here again." Marcus managed a tight smile. "Yeah, well, I guess the town called me back." Daniel didn't laugh. Instead, he looked past Marcus, almost as if he were trying to avoid eye contact. The silence between them stretched long enough for Marcus to feel uncomfortable. When Daniel finally spoke again, his voice was measured. "Leah's been talking about you." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Has she?" Daniel's eyes flicked briefly toward Leah before he returned his gaze to Marcus. "She's been keeping herself busy. Helping out with the town's projects, keeping things together, the usual." Marcus felt a pang of guilt. The usual. That was what Leah had done when he left. She had held everything together while he chased his dreams, leaving her with nothing but an empty promise to return. And now, after all this time, Marcus felt like a stranger in his own town, a stranger in his own life. Later that evening, Marcus met Leah for coffee at the cafe by the river. It was supposed to be a casual catch-up, but the air between them was thick with the things they hadn't said. Leah had changed, and Marcus wasn't sure if it was her or if it was him that had changed too much. He still remembered the way they used to talk, how easy it was to be around her, how simple their lives had seemed before the world had pulled them apart. "I'm glad you came back," Leah said, her voice quieter than before. "But why now, Marcus? What made you come back after all this time?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. He wanted to be honest with her, to tell her everything, that he had missed her, that he had been running from the life they could have had, that he had never truly gotten over her. But instead, he only offered a half-hearted shrug. "I guess I needed to find something. Some kind of closure." Leah nodded, but her expression faltered. "Closure?" she asked softly. "You think you can find that here?" Marcus didn't answer right away. The truth was he didn't know. But he did know that the more time he spent in Riverdale, the more the unresolved feelings between him and Leah felt like a weight he couldn't escape. The evening passed slowly. There was no grand revelation, no sudden confrontation, but Marcus could feel the simmering tension between them, between him, Leah, and even Daniel. He had come back hoping for answers, but now all he felt was more confusion. Marcus had been back in Riverdale for almost a week now, and while the town had stayed the same, everything felt different to him. The familiarity of the streets, the quaint little shops, the sounds of the river flowing, it all felt like a memory he was trying to relive. But the more time he spent here, the more he realized that his return wasn't as simple as he had imagined. Something was off. He noticed it first with Leah. She was distant, but not in the way he had expected. It wasn't that she was upset with him, but something in her had shifted. She laughed, sure, but it wasn't the same carefree laugh he remembered. There was always a hesitation now, a pause before the words left her lips. The more Marcus watched her, the more he saw the signs, the way her eyes would dart away when they talked about certain things, the way she constantly checked her phone in the middle of their conversations. It wasn't just a passing habit, it was like she was avoiding him, or something else. One evening, Marcus and Leah went to a local bar for a drink. It was the same place they used to frequent together, a dimly lit pub with a jukebox in the corner. The air smelled of wood and spilled beer, the chatter of locals filling the background. Marcus had always loved this place. It reminded him of the simplicity of their past. But tonight, the atmosphere felt heavy, like something was just about to break. Leah was sitting across from him, playing with her drink, her gaze fixed on the table. He could feel the tension between them like a low hum. He tried to ignore it, but the closer they got to the topic of why he had returned, the more palpable it became. "So, what's the real reason you came back?" Leah asked, her voice a little too light, a little too casual. Marcus took a deep breath. He could feel the words on the tip of his tongue, but for some reason he hesitated. I think I just need to find some answers." Leah looked at him, her eyes locking onto his for a brief moment. Then just as quickly she turned her gaze away. "I get it," she said, her voice quieter now. "Closure. You've always needed closure." Marcus frowned, sensing something off in her tone. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. Leah paused, then let out a small, almost nervous laugh. "Nothing. Just, you always said you needed closure, remember?" she added, shrugging it off. But Marcus wasn't satisfied with her answer. The way she said it felt like there was something more behind it. Closure? Hadn't they talked about that before? What did she know that he didn't? Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He'd been spending a lot of time with Leah trying to reconnect, but there was an unspoken distance between them. Daniel had been distant too, though in a different way. The last time they spoke, Daniel had barely made eye contact. He was polite, but there was an underlying coldness that hadn't been there before. Marcus had noticed it during their conversations about work and old memories. There was something about Daniel that didn't add up. It wasn't just the quiet moments between them, it was the way Daniel avoided certain topics. The past seemed like a taboo subject. One afternoon, Marcus found himself at the local hardware store, picking up a few things for the house. He'd gone in to grab some paint for a project, but when he ran into Daniel in the aisle, it felt like they were two strangers side by side. Daniel wasn't his old self, the guy who would joke around, talk about the good old days. Today he was all business. "Hey man," Marcus said, trying to break the ice. "How's everything been? Been meaning to catch up." Daniel didn't look up from the shelf he was inspecting. "Same old, you know. Nothing new." Marcus leaned against the shelf, watching his friend carefully. "You sure about that? You've been acting weird since I got back." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. For a brief moment, there was an awkward silence. Then, with a half-hearted shrug, Daniel said, "I'm just busy. You know how it is." But Marcus wasn't convinced. Daniel's avoidance of the subject, his reluctance to even acknowledge their past friendship, made Marcus feel like he was being kept at arm's length. Something wasn't right, but Marcus couldn't figure out what. The last straw came one late evening. Marcus had stayed up late in his guest room, scrolling through his phone. He was just about to put it down and go to bed when a text notification popped up. At first, he didn't think anything of it. But when he saw the name on the screen, his stomach sank. It was from Leah's phone. It wasn't a message to him, but a message to Daniel. Marcus didn't mean to snoop, but curiosity got the best of him. The text was brief but direct. "We need to talk. I can't keep doing this." He felt a rush of unease, and before he could stop himself, he opened the message. What he saw next sent a chill down his spine. It was a series of cryptic emojis and a single line that read, "It's getting harder to keep the secret." His heart pounded as he read it again. What secret? Was this about him? Was Leah and Daniel hiding something from him? What was going on behind his back? Marcus sat in the darkness, his phone gripped tightly in his hands. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place, but the more he uncovered, the more questions arose. He hadn't expected to come back to Riverdale and find himself tangled in a web of secrets. What had happened between Leah and Daniel while he was away? And why was everyone being so guarded? The growing suspicion gnawed at him, but he didn't have the answers yet. All he knew was that something wasn't right, and he was determined to find out what. It was a regular evening when Marcus couldn't hold it in any longer. The weight of everything he'd uncovered, the texts, the tension, the unanswered questions, had finally broken him. He had to confront Leah and Daniel to make them face the truth. He couldn't live in this suspense any longer, where every word they said felt like a lie wrapped in silence. That night, Marcus showed up unannounced at Leah's house. The lights were on, casting long shadows across the driveway. He knocked on the door, his heart pounding in his chest. When Leah opened it, she looked surprised but didn't seem too startled. She had probably known this moment was coming. "Marcus?" she asked, her voice tight, betraying the calm she was trying to maintain. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but firm. "All of us." Leah stepped back, her face unreadable. "About what?" "About everything," Marcus replied, pushing past her before she could say anything else. He wasn't waiting for an invitation. Inside, the house was quiet, almost eerily so. The place that had once felt like a warm, inviting home now felt cold, like a stage set for a confrontation. Marcus didn't sit. He didn't wait for her to offer him tea or a drink like they used to. "I know," he started, his voice low, carrying the weight of everything he had discovered. "I know about the text. I know about the secret." Leah froze, and for the first time Marcus saw something in her eyes, a flicker of guilt or maybe fear. But she didn't deny it. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but even her words felt hollow. "Don't lie to me," Marcus shot back. "I saw the messages. From Daniel. You think I wouldn't figure it out? You think I wouldn't notice how you've been avoiding me? The way you're suddenly too busy every time I ask about him?" Leah opened her mouth to respond, but Marcus cut her off. He wasn't going to let her talk her way out of this. Not this time. I know it was you, Marcus said, his voice rising now. I know you two have been hiding something from me. And I deserve the truth. There was a long, painful silence. Leah didn't answer. Instead, she just stood there looking at him with those same eyes that used to bring him comfort, now filled with something darker. Finally, Leah's shoulders sagged and her defiance faded. I didn't want to hurt you, Marcus, she said quietly, her voice cracking. I never meant for any of this to happen. But you weren't here when I needed you. Marcus's heart sank, but he held his ground. What are you talking about? I never stopped caring about you, but you left me. You left me to deal with everything alone. And then Daniel? Leah hesitated, her face flushed with emotion. He was there. He didn't leave. I didn't have anyone else, Marcus. Not really. Is that what this is about? Marcus asked, his voice almost a whisper now. You felt abandoned? So you just went to Daniel for comfort. Leah nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I didn't plan for any of it to happen. But then it did. And the more I tried to hide it, the worse it got. And you were so far away, so focused on your own life. I needed someone, Marcus. I needed someone to make me feel like I was still worth something. Marcus's chest tightened as he realized the depth of her pain. He'd always known that leaving Riverdale would have consequences, but hearing her say it, hearing her admit it, struck him like a blow to the gut. But the truth hurt more than anything else. You should have told me, Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. You should have come to me. I would have been there for you. Just as the conversation was beginning to feel like it was coming to some sort of resolution, Marcus heard the door open behind him. He turned around to see Daniel standing in the doorway, looking just as conflicted as Leah had. I think it's time you knew the whole story, Daniel said, his voice rough. She's right. We've been hiding things from you. From both of you. But it wasn't just her. Marcus's anger flared again. What do you mean it wasn't just her? You knew, Daniel. You knew and you didn't say anything. You didn't stop her. Daniel stepped forward, his face grim. You think I didn't try? You think I didn't care about you too? But she needed me. She needed someone. And I was there for her. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to break it to you. Marcus shook his head, disbelief written all over his face. So this is it? You both just kept this from me? You let me come back thinking everything was fine, while you were both lying to me? Leah looked down at the floor, unable to meet his gaze. Daniel, on the other hand, stood tall but looked at Marcus with regret in his eyes. I'm sorry, man, Daniel said quietly. I never wanted it to get this far. But I wasn't sure how to fix it. Or if it even could be fixed. Marcus stood there for a long time, the weight of their betrayal crushing him. His mind was spinning, the pieces of their confession mixing together in a blur. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. Everything he had once trusted in this town, in these people, felt like it had crumbled. Leah and Daniel had been his friends, the people he thought he could rely on, and now they were the ones who had betrayed him in the most unimaginable way. Is it too late to fix any of this? Marcus asked, his voice breaking. Leah finally looked at him, her eyes full of regret. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know if we can go back. Marcus turned and walked toward the door. He didn't have any answers. He didn't know what to say to either of them. I thought I could trust you both, he said quietly, his voice low with sorrow. But now, I don't know who you are anymore. Marcus left their house, the sound of the door closing behind him almost deafening in the silence. The night air was cold and he felt it on his skin as if it was the first time he had ever really felt alive in years. He had come back for closure, but now all he had was more questions. He didn't know what was next for him, or for Leah and Daniel. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again.